Hey, what is up, good people? My name is William Alderman. Back with you guys with another video. Obviously, we are talking about broadhead tuning, but first we got to talk about the arrow if we're going to talk about broadhead tuning. So we are going to do a quick blurb about my arrow build for this year's hunting season, which is the same as last year. I got my RIP TKOs, shooting it in an elite series, and I am predominantly going for whitetail. So all I need is a light, fast arrow. So I do have the lightest components on here. I did add a wrap, but that is not just for aesthetics. That is actually for function, but we're gonna go from the front side and then work our way to the back of the arrow. So right now, all of my points are going to be 100 grains when it comes down to my arrows. Now, one little tip, since I'm talking about the point, is I believe in gluing in your points, not super gluing though. So some people will super glue their points as well as their inserts, and then that arrow is locked down to whatever you originally set it to. Whereas I believe in using hot melt, MFJJ's hot melt, the big old glob of whatever this is. I did order it a few years ago. I'm truly not a fan of it. I actually like the blue boning hot melt that comes in little sticks, little strips, and it's just a lot more easier to work with. And I like the way it dries. It dries a lot harder, almost like a glue. Whereas this brown stuff, I still use it because it's what I already spent my money on, but it just kind of is gunky where I feel like it still can back out if you want to. Whereas I would rather use this 20-year-old heat gun and light this point up and be able to twist it in and out rather than it be able to kind of slightly move with the gunk. Now, does it actually move? Not 100%, not exactly, but I just like the way the blue sets a little bit better. With that being said, I do have the Easton Hit insert, which is maybe about 12 ounces, or not 12 ounces, 12 grains. And then working up the shaft, I am shooting at 31.5-inch draw, so I believe these are cut carbon and carbon about 29, I think. I would have to measure it to be more exact. But I do have it cut pretty close to the riser, so whatever that puts me at. And I do believe in shooting fixed blades, so I did have to kind of keep all of that in consideration. But with my fixed blades, with me melting it, I can kind of orient them so they stay away from the riser if I do ever have any of those issues. But that's for a little bit later on in the conversation. Now, when it comes down to the back of my arrow, I am shooting tack vanes with a boning reflective wrap. The reason why I'm doing that instead of lighted nocks is because lighted nocks, to me, even with the expensive or cheaper ones, I felt like they were going to be pretty inconsistent with the way that my everyday nock fits. And I'm not going to shoot lighted nocks year round. And I also don't want to change my center serving when I get around to hunting season. I want to shoot my bow year round and not have to have quick or big overhaul changes when it comes down to my setup. Now, people are killing plenty of deer and flipping back and forth and doing just fine. But for me, if I can control my variables, I'd rather do that, which is why I went with the reflective white actual wrap. And I actually cut these in half. They were the like 8-inch, and I cut them down to 4. One, because it doubled my money, but then 2, it made it a little bit more streamlined and a little bit cleaner. And I do have the tack with the highlighter or whatever yellow you want to call it, fluorescent yellow. One, just because I think it looks good, but I also was trying to get a stiffer vane because I thought it would give me a little bit more distance. Sound isn't really a big proponent for me, but that is another pro of shooting the stiffer vane. But I'm not a huge fan of them. I know this video, I feel like I'm hitting on like pros and cons, but in reality, I'm just gonna give you the pros and cons of everything and you take it as a positive or negative. But this has a very long memory because of how stiff they are. Now, can you heat them up and reshape them? Yes. But last year I had a few hunts that my number one arrow, or not few, it happened once, and I was sitting in my tree, went to knock my arrow and then hang it up, and when I got it out, it had bent. And usually with my boning, that wasn't a big issue. I used to run the boning blazer vanes, and that was just not a big issue with those. Even when it was like under something, it would take the flex, but then by the time I get out to the tree, it was back to normal. Same thing when I'm shooting out back. I would rub it a few times and it would straighten out. These did not want to do that. Now, can I reshape them at home? Yes, but my issue is on the field or in the field, I was having an issue with that. So that's where my big headache with that came about. So that's why I have or want to go back to boning blazer vanes. But these things are working beautifully and they're on all my arrows. So I don't believe in ripping off vanes just because of one little negative. They still have been doing great. They've been steering the broadheads just fine all last year. And I was able to sight it out to about like 50 or 60 yards with my, now we're going to talk about the actual points. I was shooting my iron wills last year, my first year hunting. However, I started off with the Muzzy Trocars. And the reason why I went away from the Muzzy Trocars is simply put the fact that you have to replace the blades every time you shoot it dang near, unless you just hit nothing and it somehow scathed damage. And I'm not a big proponent of replacing things. I would rather repair things, which then brings me to the idea of sharpening. Now, that's when I got these iron wills off Archery Talk, got a pretty good deal on them, but I had issues sharpening them. Not that I couldn't get it sharp, but I felt like I was messing up the profile because I was doing it by hand. And I just never really felt like I was really doing the iron will justice. And I felt like I was just destroying them rather than keeping them as nice and pretty as I wanted them to be. Now, did they still do the job? Did they get sharp? Of course, like really, really good still. But I did end up finding these, the original Montex at 100 grain. And I am going to be shooting these this year. One, because of how simple it is to sharpen them and resharpen them. You literally just get a diamond stone, which I already have, and I'm able to rub it, flip it, and rub it again on top of it. And so to me, that is a huge proponent of a shootable arrow. I want to be able to shoot it. Me, as I'm processing my deer or whatever, right when I'm done, being able to throw it on a stone and sharpen it right back up and being able to use it, that's what takes #1 priority for me. Now, with all that being said, that is my total arrow build. And now I'm going to show you guys what it looks like to actually remove and then put it back in. And then we're also going to record a video about how I go about actually tuning my fixed blades and broadhead tuning. That's going to be a different video though, so stay tuned. But with all of that being said, don't mind the noise. This thing's going to heat up. And hopefully I can actually block out the noise. But I do always make sure I have pliers when it comes down to this part because I'm not going to touch hot metal. I have multiple pliers that I use along the way. I have this one that I taped up with some electrical tape to make sure that I don't scar up my field points or my broadheads, especially when it came down to my target stuff. I wanted it to stay pretty, so I try to protect it as much as possible. That's why it has glue and all of that on it. I also use these, which are the Easton like Pro D-loop pliers. They have little grooves that are made to help like cinch on like speed knocks on knocking points if you're doing like a recurve bow. And I use those because it wraps perfectly around the broadhead without putting a bunch of little grooves in it. But then I also have these little D-loop pliers. Now, they're not actually D-loop pliers. They're little like power built, whatever brand that is from whoever knows where. But I actually cut out grooves, if you can see that. I actually cut out grooves behind these to actually make them into D-loop pliers for if there was ever a situation where somebody wanted a smaller D-loop, because I do help some people out with their bows. And it just allows me to get a little bit tighter into tighter spaces where these would not be able to squeeze into. I did file them down as well to make sure that they would not fray the actual D-loop as well as the actual serving, because I think that that's super important. And if you just take your time with a file, you can do anything. But with that being said, we're going to talk about changing this out. So now I am heating this up over the heat. And this is just going to be my field point. I don't have to heat it up for long. See, it's already moving because I don't want my insert to also come out because I also have my insert heated up. So I try again, just like I said earlier, to focus solely on the actual point and not the shaft. One, because of the glue that the shaft is put together with. I don't want to loosen that up or change any of the carbon properties inside of it. But also, I just don't want to heat up the insert because then my insert starts moving around. Unless I am trying to index my broadheads, which is a thing. I'm sure some people do it. I don't usually spend a ton of time thinking about it, but with the hot melt, it makes it super easy for me to index. And for those that don't know what indexing is, if you look at the helical of your actual arrow and you see how your vanes are, if you're running a 3 vein and you're shooting a 3 blade, what indexing simply put is making sure that your arrows line up with your actual fletchings. Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't know if that's like a huge thing and if it actually matters, but to some people it does. I just try to stay out of the way and do the things that actually matter, which is practice shooting my bow and aim small and miss small. Woo, sorry about that. But so we are popping these things out. Shout out to G5 over at TAC this year, or I guess it was last year. They actually had these little broadhead things where you can literally take these and tighten on your broadhead without actually touching the blade, which is super beneficial. But now when it comes down, I'm just heating up the actual broadhead. Again, I'm trying to focus more on the back end of it because I don't want to take out the heat treat of the steel. I think, again, if I can take care of my stuff, that's going to be number one. But then the other thing is heating up the hot melt so I don't have to get the steel as hot as I normally would if I were just running it through. And then I'm just going to put a little bit around the threads. It doesn't need a lot. Where you can see right there, it does not need a lot at all. Then I take my point. I'm going to heat it up just a little bit more to make sure it seats all the way. And then voila, I twist it in. And now that broadhead is going nowhere. And this is what I was talking about when it comes down to indexing. And that's interesting. It actually indexed perfectly. I guess I indexed this one last year, or maybe it was just a happy little thing that just happened. But that's how easy it is to actually change your actual broadhead. But when I'm talking about indexing, you can see where my top fletch will actually line up with my fletch, and then my bottom ones line up with the bottom of the arrow or with the bottom vanes. Super simple, super easy to work with. And to me, that is the way to actually put in your broadheads. Another way to make sure it seats properly is to put it under cold water. I do like doing that because it seats it like really, really tight, just like if you're using super glue. But this is removable and reusable. So when it comes down to it, this is what I'm gonna be shooting. I'm going to pick out one right now to broadhead tune. And then I am also going to be putting my iron wills, because I will be putting those back into my quiver. But I'm gonna have 3 of these and 2 iron wills. And I'm going to make sure I broadhead tune both of them and hopefully kill some deer this year, just like last year. But stay tuned for the broadhead tuning video. Right now, that is it for my arrow build and how I am going to be setting them up this year. Be great, be better. William Alderman is out. Peace.